Further back, we still have the two Champions League teams, Dortmund, Atlético Madrid. It's kind of hard to criticize Dortmund for their last two performances because they got the job done against PSV, they got the job done against Eintracht Frankfurt today. I think the counterpoint to that is both these games could have also gone a different direction. It was really interesting because we had Matt Ford at the PSV game and had him call in to do our reaction show. And he saw a very different game in stadium than both Stefan and I saw live on television. And it's so fascinating how it can be so different what you see live versus what you see on TV. And I mean, yes, the first 35 minutes against PSV Dortmund were excellent. Today, they got the job done again. I don't know about you, Seb, but I fancy them against Atletico. I know it's weird because they're not that
don't think
good,
it's unreasonable, Manu. Yeah, but then this is what we've said all the way through the Champions League with Dortmund. Like, I think, had you asked me before the two Newcastle games, I'd have favoured Newcastle. Before we knew what Newcastle were.
Totally.
I don't think I really fancied them in Milan. And, you know, they were very, very good that night. And actually, individually, if you look at the difference between some of the, like, just look at the defence, right? So, Hummels and Schlotterbeck are completely different players in Europe than they are in Germany. Yeah. It's very weird.
Yeah.
I have no explanation for it, but they are, like, I look at Hummels in the Champions League and he looks 5 years younger.
It's really hard to explain. And I mean, I remember us doing the live show after the Klassiker where they got absolutely smashed by Bayern. And then a completely different team showed up against Newcastle like 3 or 4 days later. And we've seen that throughout this entire season. And I saw the Atletico Madrid draw and I'm like, that's actually kind of like a perfect team for them. Because they are good on paper. You know, their reputation is probably bigger than what they are at the moment, right? They're a tough playing opponent, which is something that Dortmund actually kind of likes, right? I put them kind of in the same kind of category than like PSV and Newcastle or Milan. It's a very manageable. They still have to play the games and have to win those games, obviously. But I thought that I looked at the draw, I'm like, wow, Dortmund could go pretty deep in the Champions League here.
You could do. I think what gives me a hope. If you hadn't been paying attention to Atletico's season, you'd say clearly they're favourites. But actually, they're not particularly great this year.
No,
and I would say they played above themselves against Inter. I think they were pretty fortunate. I really thought that, especially after the first leg, I thought it would go through. Yeah. The only reason I worry for them, Manu, is because I think the individual players are of a high level, and I still do think that Edin Terzic's football is individual-led to an extent. I think you need heroes is the wrong way of putting it, but you need talisman within your performances to knock over teams like Atletico Madrid in the same way that they did against Newcastle. Like I thought Felix Lemaitre was fantastic against Newcastle. Jamie Biden-Gittins was brilliant against AC Milan in the away leg. I think you need that. Whereas if you come up against an informed Griezmann, for instance, as an example, that's a level of player they haven't seen yet in the Champions League. I suppose Mbappe's quite a good player, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's okay. Yeah.
He's okay. He's pretty good.
He would sneak into the Dortmund side. I just mean that, like, I think an Mbappe style player, a Griezmann style player, because I just don't trust that defense, and it's not helped by the fact that like Hummels has been magnificent in the Champions League, save that ridiculous penalty decision against him in Eindhoven.
That is the one thing
awful refereeing. At
some point that referee misfortune that Dortmund have had in this competition must swing into their favor.
You'd think so.
Because the calls that they had against him are just ridiculous. I mean, I'm not a Dortmund fan by any stretch of the imagination, but even I would be like, it's just the amount of refereeing decisions that go against them is just kind of weird. And you would think at some point that will go the other way. As my 1860 jersey falls down the back.
That was like a living metaphor. That was incredible. That no one touched it. It just fell off on its own accord. Like, that is, for a club that's had like 1 million bankruptcies that have been self-inflicted.
But yeah, I just think that's at some point that will have turn around. But like, I find this Dortmund team so very fascinating because nothing would shock me about them at this stage anymore. I could see them finish 5th in the Bundesliga. Don't quote me on this. I don't actually think they're going to win the Champions League, but it wouldn't shock me. You know what I mean?
It would shock me. I mean, I think they're going out. I think actually, I don't think offensively they have enough going forward. I think also, in the same way that we've described this as being a kind of a virtue of this Dortmund side, I think Atletico are a completely different beast in European football. Because I don't think there are very few places in Europe I would rather less go than the Wanda if I needed a result, or if I needed to kind of put myself on a steady footing ahead of a second leg. It's a terrible place to have to go.
True.
And I think Dortmund are built to survive it. At Bayern, I would give more of a puncher's chance, just because at Bayern you have the firepower. You can, Kane aside, you know that you're going to get the kind of the moments of inspiration from a Sané and Musiala. Even Gnabry seems to be coming back into some kind of form of fitness. And you have a grizzled element to the side that runs all the way through it. So you've got players like Neuer or Müller who they're not going to be intimidated. Whereas, I don't know, you put Schlotterbeck in there.
Yeah, but I feel like this Dortmund team has walked through the fire in the Champions League this season. And is the second leg in Dortmund, or is it there?
Yes, it's in Dortmund.
Okay, I think that is the difference for me. And we're going to talk about Bayern in a moment here. Yes, the second leg is in Dortmund. That makes all the difference. I kind of said
that with more confidence than I really had in what I was saying, so I'm glad you checked that.
That's why I always have several windows open with all these information on myself.
Nice.
But I think that makes all the difference. You get a good result in Madrid, and they come back to Dortmund with a 1-1.
Yeah. Hey, I'd love you to be right. I think it would be the Bundesliga needs a strong Dortmund. I think also. If the Bundesliga is to get that extra Champions League spot, Dortmund are going to have to win.
We know how to do it. The Dortmund and Bayern have to essentially reach the final. Yeah.
Yeah, so also, if you've got... we're going to get to Bayern and Arsenal later, I know that. But if only one German team progresses from this stage, including Leverkusen, who are going to play West Ham, it's finished. The Premier League is going to take the 5th place, which it is what it is. But I feels more necessary at this point in the Bundesliga's history. I know, I understand it's not ideal that may fall into the hands of RB Leipzig, but at the same time, having more German teams in the top flight of European competition, particularly now, just matters.